Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel, wishing you a happy early start to nice Friday morning. It's the end of the week, baby. We got a new month. It's the beginning of December, and it's the end of the week. And there's plenty to discuss, actually, on the higher term timeframes and even on the short term timeframes as well, as we continue the analysis that we've been looking at for quite some time now. Anyways, I wanted to discuss a few new things today. I think, dare I say, some rather exciting things. And yes, no more sale to be speaking about. So that's right. There's never going to be a sale again. So just kidding. Of course, we'll have one probably sometime around Christmas. Crazy how that works out. Anyways, yes, so no FOMO there. And let's just jump right into it right now. So I wanted to start off today's analysis in a bit of a different vein. So I wanted to start it off actually with DXY, the dollar index, and kind of get a general gauge of what we're looking at on the very high term timeframes, because we haven't spoken about this just yet. So this is the monthly, obviously, that just closed a couple days ago, and we have a lot of new information about it that does make the next couple months look, dare I say, relatively clear. So what do I mean by that? Well, first and foremost, DXY is a dollar index, which is the dollar's value relative to a basket of other fiat currencies, not directly correlated with risk on assets, but on the higher term timeframes, we do typically observe on the long term an inverse correlation on the actual trend. So in this case, we can see that the monthly has put in a nice monthly top. We can see extremes have been met on the monthly BBWP, now getting below the moving average for the first time in a while. So volatility is now going into a contraction phase. Very likely we found a good top here on the monthly. On top of that, to use a bad pun, we can also see that there's some very obvious bearish divergence on the monthly right here, monthly RSI, I should say, from these highs in March 2015 versus the highs that we just saw officially in September. And then, of course, to accompany that, we also do see that with the monthly jewel is getting a downside signal, now getting follow through from the November signal right here. So this is a high term time frame on monthly, obviously, and very likely we do see another leg down somewhere around about $1.02 to $1.01.5, let's say, and then very likely another attempt at a bounce right there. Problem is that long term, this one still holds its uptrend for a while and will be in an uptrend, especially as long as it's above about $98. But in the relative short term, probably within these next 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4 months, we very likely do see some downside continuation. So that likely gives a reprieve to risk on assets like Bitcoin, like the majority of cryptos. And so that's kind of where I want to start off things today. Of course, if we were to take this one step further, we can also see, not yet at least, we can also see that the monthly stochastic momentum oscillator is also going to be headed down. Now, this one obviously precipitated the move as it naturally should, but it is now officially below the critical zone. It remains to the downside as long as DXY is below about 112. So ultimately, I'm looking at this as another signal that, hey, over the next month, maybe 2 months, Bitcoin more than likely goes at least sideways. I think that we've seen the lows for now, certainly, or I shouldn't say certainly, but we've very likely seen the lows for now. At worst, Bitcoin goes sideways and maybe grazes around the current lows, but ultimately there's going to be a lot of reasons for at least an attempt at a bear market rally, maybe even a MAC reversal. There's always some hope in the back of our minds for that as well, but ultimately, at least some attempt at a greater bounce here. So let's now actually go into Bitcoin. I want to focus this one specifically on the higher term timeframes because we have the weekly closing today for CME, and for the weekly over here, we can see a couple of pretty interesting things, at least in my opinion. First and foremost, or potentially foremost, would be the weekly RSI. We'll have a chance to put in regular bullish divergence here between the lows that we saw in June and the lows that we've seen in early November. That'll be confirmed, especially with a weekly closure above 17,500. So if you see that happen today upon the weekly closure, we're very likely going to see an extended rally, probably north of $18,000, maybe even as high as $19,500 to $20,000 into the beginning portion of 2023. If we take this another step over here, let me see. Yes, we can also see that weekly stochastic momentum, again, closing today, will also turn up if Bitcoin on CME closes above 17,450. So anywhere above there, that'd be like the next major green light, at least in my mind, for looking for a big continuation on this rally attempt. Thus far, it's been nice on the lower term timeframes, but realistically, when you put things into perspective, it hasn't been fuck all on on any time frame that actually matters for the long term, of course. So Now that we've gone through that, I want to also add to the case as to why $17,500 is super important here. At least in my opinion, it's super important. And it comes back to this chart over here. This one actually still hasn't gone away. It's the 5-day chart, not CME. This one's for spot price action. Did close last night. Will close again like sometime early next week, maybe like Tuesday, I think. Being that it is a 5-day chart, it takes 5 days for it to close one period. And then the signal here is still valid as of right now. But as we're going to discuss, $17,500 can basically unravel that. So the signal was a volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. Again, volatility represented by BBWP, stochastic momentum by this indicator down here. Basically, the direction of, hey, where's my damn chart? There it is. It's like, wait, who the fuck stole my chart? No. But basically over the last 5 years, we backtested this data with extreme lows on BBWP, accompanied by the stochastic oscillator's direction has gotten, on average about a 42.35% move over the course of 37 days, blah, 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 blah. You've seen this a million times. This one seems to be pretty damn close to being done because this signal started off in early November and now here we are in early December. So if we expect on average 37 days, that would maybe bring us into like at latest next week. Now we've already seen the 2-day time frame signal basically, solved. No, like what's the word that I'm looking for? I can't find it again, motherfucker. What's this English thing? How does it work? It was basically resolved. Yes, resolved. That's close enough to what I'm looking for. Resolved. Yes, the signal's been resolved. So in this case, the 5-day probably follows through with that. And of course, we can also forecast the 5-day stochastic momentum pivot for the next closure, which is 17,450. That number just continues to pop up time and time again for the weekly for CME, for the RSI divergence levels, and then also just for, a little bit of a low break of structure here as well. So a lot of things kind of coming in around there, and there'll actually even be a few more once we get into it a little bit later. But for right now, this is getting into pretty extremes here. Even for the stochastic, you can see that we do have a nice regressional trend line governing the last few lows here, the last few major bounces, that is. Now, these major bounces have been all bear market rally bounces, but they're all pretty damn decent, 20%-ish, let's say. From low to high, and in this case, could we witness something relatively similar here? Definitely possible as well. Definitely possible. Again, hinged upon the 17,450, 17,500 region. I think 17.5 is just easier to say. All right, sweet. So now that we've gotten through that, let's actually get into some fun stuff over here. So this is the HPDR. This is the historical price delta range indicator. Caretakers come out with some new goodness, baby, and I couldn't be more fucking excited because I've actually been using it for a while now, but now I can talk about it a little bit more directly on video here. Anyways, this is just a streamlined way of kind of getting the probabilities aligned with certain ranges. So I'm on a 4-hour time frame. Obviously, this will change depending upon your time frame, but basically we can see that the current short-term time, the current more immediate range would be about 17,500 to the upside versus 16,600 to the downside. So I want to be very deliberately clear with this. To the downside, below 16,600, that is where I start to look at this current price action on the short, medium, and maybe even higher term timeframes as a major trap. And you're very likely going to see another move back down somewhere around the current weekly range lows. So that puts Bitcoin between, 15,500 to 16,000 if we were to see that. So again, that would be with a 4-hour closure, specifically below about 16,600 or 16,700, depending upon, your exchange right there. But ultimately, this will also calculate the probabilities for, with various different numbers here, dependent upon, how well aggressive or not aggressive you are. So in this case, kind of just streamlined way of looking at such things. I've also constructed a couple of strategies for it as well that I'm currently in the middle of back testing and forward testing, which quite like actually. Anyways, so yes, we can kind of see the ranges quite easily from that region. Again, let's just call it 16,650 to the downside on a 4-hour closure versus 17.5 to the upside, again on a 4-hour closure. If the upside gets broken, I would be looking for the next short-term move somewhere around 18 to 18.5. Sorry, actually, let's see, what's the next zone right here? It'd actually be 18.7 or closer to 18.7. Yeah, closer to 18.7. So 18.5 to 18.7-ish region. And to the downside, yeah, that's where I'm getting that $15.5 to $16,000 target or so. Let me just double check. Yeah, 15.5. Nice, sweet. Okay. So let's now match that up with stochastic momentum and see, on these lower term timeframes or relatively lower term timeframes and see where those pivots are. So the daily, first and foremost, for CME, a couple things of interest right here. First and definitely foremost is that volatility has gone for the full contraction. So Bitcoin is setting up for a move. Hey, it's got a fucking move. It's like, duh. But my point is that, we're probably looking at like a 20 to 30% move upon confirmation and validation of volatility expansion, from basically around this region. So to the upside, where that essentially puts you. 20% actually puts you closer to like 19.5 to $20,000. To the downside, obviously that would put you on new lows, closer to like 13 to 13.5 thousand bucks. So 13.5, and 13,000 bucks are still relevant. As we went over on the monthly chart for the accumulation distribution indicator, we're still not getting like the signals that I'm looking for to define, a macro low, just yet. It's still saying hold off on, on getting a bit aggressive with that. It says that we're getting quite close, but it's not quite there just yet. Anyways, for the daily right here, the current pivot is at 15,730 on CME. So very likely stochastic momentum remains to the upside for another period. 12-hour time frame is going to be showing upside as well, as long as Bitcoin's above 16,850. But Bitcoin's trading on CME $10 above that pivot right now, and this one has another hour and 55 minutes left to closure. So it's already kind of at the extremes here. We've seen a lot of rallies arrested within this region. It's kind of this would kind of be a little bit more on the bearish point of view here. The 6-hour time frame, same thing, turning down from critical region here. 17,200 going to be the magical number. 4-hour time frame down as well at 17,100, and hourly is going to be probably down too. No, it's actually up as long as Bitcoin's above 16,800. So you can kind of see the short-term time frame ebbs and flows. Does that mean that Bitcoin pulls back in the medium term? Probably yes. Does it break 16.6? That's a real question, or 16.650 on a closing basis. If it does, well, okay, then we're very likely looking at another return back down towards those major lows. Maybe even continues with trend. Although I think that that's a little bit less likely. To the upside, I think that's a little bit easier in this case. It'd probably be looking somewhere around mid-18s with potential for more over time, of course, as well. So I think that's a good place to be leaving off on this particular video. I think I got just about everything in there that I wanted to get in there. Yeah, it's time for me to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.